they chose to, they killed the wrong guy, right? Because this is like the perfect guy. Alex Pretti is the guy you would want to date your daughter. The guy you would want your son to grow up to be, a decent human being who was serving humanity, serving sick veterans, who is, there is nothing that has been said about that man that isn't wonderful. And so they can't malign him. They can't malign him because we have the videos.
Wow, so now the media wants us to believe that the man killed in Minneapolis during an ICE operation was some flawless, outstanding citizen, and that ICE agents are just roaming the streets, hunting innocent Americans for sport. No skepticism, no context, just he's innocent, and instant outrage. And I have a question. What exactly was this so-called great American patriot doing in the streets of Minneapolis during a federal immigration enforcement operation? Because the moment you ask yourself that question, the narrative starts to crack. And when you actually look closer, this wasn't some quiet bystander. He was a damn troublemaker.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Pretti interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy.
Wow, and that's the kind of man they're calling an upstanding citizen? These people are delusional. This wasn't some random peaceful passerby minding his own business. 2 weeks earlier, he's on camera, kicking an ICE agent's vehicle, provoking officers, escalating the tension his damn self. That doesn't look like activism to me. That's more like instigation. But leave it to these people, and they will say we shouldn't believe our lying eyes. The man was a patient, loving, calm, gentle soul.
What they did was, and with Renee Good, what they did is they hit at the best of us doing activities that are at the core of what it means to be American.
Caring for people was at the core of who he was. He was incapable of causing harm. Alex carried patience, compassion, and calm.
Wow, calm, gentle, a good American? That's the story we're going with now. Because apparently kicking an ICE vehicle and provoking federal agents is what calm and gentle looks like now. Amazing how fast the definition changes when the media needs a narrative to point at ICE and blame them for this whole mess. But let's not blame the guy who went out of his way to show up where the agents were and to disrupt federal business. Right? Oh no, let's not do that. What a joke.
Yeah, look, I think the video that we've seen adds context to what he was probably doing over a period of time. I think the narrative has been that he was just an innocent protester or some sort of an observer. It's obvious he was part of some organized effort to show up where federal law enforcement was and engage in some way, whether that engagement was recording or blowing whistles or whatever, or in the video's case, kicking in the taillight of a car. He was obviously there to do something. That doesn't supersede the need to have an investigation of the shooting. I support an investigation of the shooting. I will say, I think the investigation needs to be holistic, and I care more about just the shooting. I care about where did Alex Pretti come from? What part of it, what group was he in? Was he part of any kind of a training organization? I mean, I think what's going on in Minneapolis is more than just random people showing up to protest. I believe, and there's lots of evidence about this, that there are well-organized, well-trained, and well-funded agitators who are showing up with the purpose of provoking these kinds of incidents so that they can then create the narrative that somehow ICE is out of control.
Wow, Scott Jennings is always saying the quiet part out loud. The guy wasn't just existing. He was intervening in a federal operation, not observing, not walking by, intervening. But somehow, we're still supposed to pretend this was a peaceful, gentle soul, minding his own business, who randomly crossed paths with evil ICE agents. That framing only works if you completely ignore reality. Federal operations operations aren't street performances. You don't jump in, escalate, and then cry innocence afterwards. Once you intervene, you're not a bystander anymore. You're an active participant, no matter how badly they want to rewrite it. Let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, from the jump, they decided who the villain was going to be and who the hero needed to be, and they bent everything around that conclusion. ICE is bad, Trump is bad, end of story. Instead of asking basic questions, they went straight into spin mode, emotional headlines, somber music, carefully chosen words like gentle, calm, and a good American, repeated over and over. Never mind his troublemaking ways. You see, they don't want context. Context ruins their outrage, so they strip it away. They don't walk viewers through what led up to this moment. They don't explain that this man was intervening in a federal operation. They don't acknowledge that actions matter. Why? Because once you admit that, you can't just blame ICE and point the finger at Trump anymore. And that's the real goal here. This isn't about justice or truth. It's about politics. ICE becomes the monster, federal enforcement become tyranny, Trump becomes the convenient villain once again. Every tragic outcome gets funneled into the same talking points, no matter how messy the reality actually is. What makes it worse is how shameless it is. Video evidence contradicts the script. No, let's ignore that. Officials say comforting things that don't line up with reality. Yeah, let's amplify that. And anyone who questions that kind of framing, they get smeared as heartless or extreme. That's not journalism. That's narrative enforcement. The media isn't informing the public here. They're directing emotion. They want anger aimed at one direction and silence everywhere else. And the irony, they constantly lecture about misinformation while actively editing reality to protect a storyline. If the facts were truly on their side, they wouldn't need this much spin. The reason they're working overtime is simple. The truth doesn't fit the narrative, so the narrative has to replace the truth. What a joke. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one.